Hello everyone. If you spot that I've got or hear that I've got a bit of a funny voice, well, I've just had a touch of flu, cold, whatever it is. I seem to get it every so often, so the end result is a bit of laryngitis. But that's not really important. Just to know, just so you know, etc. Um, so Richard has just posted this video, Richard D. Hall, and it's an interview with James Dellingpole. Many of you may have already seen that, because I think a lot of people that subscribe to this channel have also, subscribed to Richard's list. But it's a good interview. It's posted on Odyssey as well, and James Dellingpole's posted it. It's been slightly edited. Richard did send out an update as well, which I'll just try and get up on the screen now. So you can pause the video to read this if you want. I don't think Richard archives the news updates on his website, so you just have to sign up to his list. But basically, the main things in this is that he's still sort of saying that the Hibbets haven't really produced any further evidence of their, presence at the Manchester Arena, other than what they've already shown before, which is pretty flimsy. Um, and then, so this is quite central to the way that the case is going to be run, and he should really be allowed to show that they don't have much evidence they were there, um, but he might not be able to show this in the case. This is a problem, and he's listed the videos that he's done. I'm not going to read all this message out, but the thing really I'm going to read out is that he's going to have this hearing on the 29th of January. Now, I don't think this is the actual full hearing. This is a hearing to, I think, uh, judge whether he's allowed to show this evidence of, or their lack of evidence, rather than the fighting about the claim for harassment itself. So, if you are able to go there, I think he said before he doesn't know whether this is just a room or how he get in there, but maybe just, if you can go outside. It is in London, I believe, not in Manchester. So anyway, you can study the films, etc. And obviously, we all want to support him. You can send him more donations if you want. So there you are. Is it scheduled here in the High Court on the 29th of January? So that's about 2 weeks as I make this video. So yeah, it's a good interview. They don't just cover Manchester stuff, they cover other things as well. There's a good summary of the Joe Cox evidence and various other points about police not being allowed to investigate cases, not being allowed to solve cases, I should say. He points that out again in the interview in quite a clear way. So moving on to other things then, just another of these peculiar things that's happened. Now, Stephen sent me a few links regarding this Bayside Mall incident, and this incident somewhere in Miami, where I forget, you can look this up and look at the images of police cars there. About 100 police cars turned up outside this mall, allegedly with teenagers fighting or something. Now this chap, I think he's an honest guy. I've watched a couple of his videos in the past, not for a while though, and he's looked at this incident. He talks about various clips that he was going to, present in this video. I was a bit disappointed with those. I'd seen some of those before because Stephen had already sent me them. But one thing he did point out in this video, which again is maybe just more. You can watch these clips. But one thing he pointed out was, see if it'll come up now, that if you reverse the latitude and longitude coordinates and make latitude, longitude, and longitude, latitude for the Maui Mall, then you end up in Antarctica. Now, the reason why he brings this up is people were saying that a portal had opened and these shadow creatures came out or something, or was it aliens or something? People don't really know what happened. And he was pointing out, well, if they really were experimenting with a portal, then they could have accidentally reversed the coordinates and it ended up being in Miami rather than the Antarctic, or So I mean that's just a theory, obviously, quite interesting. Um, you know, this chap's saying that he thinks 2024 is going to be the year when the cabal, finally lose control. Well, I've heard that so many times before. I'm not holding out much hope. I mean, some things have changed, but some things still seem to be the same. Um, So anyway, yeah, it was an interesting account. Something very strange apparently happened. There aren't any. The clips that he shows towards the end are very unclear. I mean, this is supposed to be footage of this portal or something, or beings coming out. It's very, very unclear, and it's actually a video of somebody filming a laptop screen, and this is very suspect to me. But it's claimed that police were deleting videos off phones as people came out of the mall, but again, it all seems a bit sketchy to me. Were they? I don't know. So the mall incident, make of it what you will. It does appear something happened, something significant, but what it was, I don't know. People have said Project Bluebeam and all kinds of things. So hey ho. Um, Moving on to the next thing then. Following a thread from a Facebook post of a friend Conrado, I came across this book from 1989, Exploring Inner and Outer Space by Dr. Brian O'Leary, and it's an interesting read. I put it through on my ebook reader, and I went through this. I tend to put these on when I'm going to sleep at night, and when I wake up early in the morning, sometime I have these going. And it's interesting because the person that wrote the foreword, which I think is Richard Grossinger, I think is his name. Yep. Now, he, in the foreword to this Exploring Inner and Outer Space book, gives the synopsis of the plot from the Capricorn 1 film, I think it was made in 1978, talks about how the whole of science, is a facade, really, for cosmic truth, I think is the words that he used. Um, uh, yeah, he likens Dr. Brian O'Leary, who was on the Mars mission. He was meant to go on the Mars mission as an astronaut, but then that got cancelled. So it's like Brubaker, who's the main character in the Capricorn 1 film. He had high ideals and believed in outer space as the destiny of mankind. He was willing to make sacrifices to explore the unknown. On the surface, the one other thing he and Brubaker share is the fact that neither of them actually made it to Mars. However, on the level of the parable, Brubaker speaks O'Leary's subtext throughout the film. Although O'Leary is not explicitly blackmailed into a role in a space scam, he does realise that the NASA ideology, and in fact the whole cabal of science, is a cover-up of cosmic truth. And so that I really like that, and the way that this introduction is written is very good. But O'Leary, of course, certainly in the book, he talks about men walking on the moon. I don't know what this was written in 1989 or published in 1989. I don't know whether O'Leary realised that Apollo was a scam. I think later perhaps he did, because then he had the understanding of what was going on in the background. But the book is good in that it mirrors my own journey in kind of realising that science and engineering, are limited hangouts. They do only go so far, and then people won't go any further, and they kind of know there's something more, but they can't talk about it because either they sound ridiculous, or they lose their jobs, or the military involved, etc., etc. And it's really these sort of things that O'Leary was coming up against. And the other fact which came up in reading this is that guess who Brian O'Leary worked for? He worked for Science Applications International Corporation, and he was doing some sort of consultancy, not direct work, on the SDI program, the Strategic Defense Initiative, called Star Wars. Now he was doing some work on that, not directly, but reviewing some research or something. And so he had to leave that. He says that in the book. He could no longer work for them. But it's interesting again that he was working for SAIC. And I know that Brian O'Leary got to know John Hutchison quite well. I understand, I could be wrong about this, that they even lived together for a while. But one of the things that was really good, and I was looking for the video before this, but I couldn't find it, is that, and we mentioned it on a Rich Planet show, is that he participated in an event discussing the face on Mars, a public event, a press conference, which was held, I think it was New York, in May 2001. It was the day before the Stephen Greer's Disclosure Project press conference. Actually, I think he discusses some of that in this Dreamland program that I found a link to here from. Um, I think this was a rerun because OLeary died in 2011. He was 71, so this might be a rerun following his death. Yeah, it's from 2001, and I think he was talking about this press conference. And they discussed all these anomalies on the face, and OLeary, was a proponent of this, along with Dr. Tom Van Flandern. You can see his presentation on YouTube if this comes up here. So that's really interesting if you haven't really seen that. I couldn't find the actual video, but this one and the second part's only about 20 minutes long or something. That's really worth looking at. So I'll include the links in the description. And then finally, here's two more things. I'll do this one first. So this isn't finally, this is penultimately. I had another book I've been reading following the Brian O'Leary one. I just found this in my collection. I don't even remember downloading it, but it's a 1977 book by Dr. Jacques Vallée, and this is very interesting too. And I'm going to be referring to this in my consciousness book because Jacques Vallée does talk about consciousness in this, but there's some really interesting sections in this, and he talks about, for example, Uri Geller and Andrea Puharich, and there's this episode where, oops, it's gone back. They had contact with this Spectra, which was some type of alien intelligence, and so that was, and then what Vallée does in this book, he goes through some of the commonality between these people that have got in touch with extraterrestrial intelligences that have given them advanced science information and stuff, and he comes out with some really interesting patterns, and then he sort of compares these to how religious figures, were contacted by angels and stuff, and how it's all very similar, and he talks about then, is this some other agency at a higher level, trying to influence the development of human consciousness, which is very, very interesting. And he talks about Affer as well. He doesn't mention Wilbert Smith, but Affer was the ET that was in touch with Wilbert Smith through Francis Swan, and he doesn't mention Francis Swan in this book. I've not heard anybody else talk about that. So that's really interesting. And the other really interesting part in this is the case of Fatima, what happened at Fatima, I think was in 1913, and there's some interesting things about that because Fatima, the entity that somehow appeared at Fatima, that predicted the Second World War about 20 years before it happened, and quite accurately as well. And a lot of weird things happened at Fatima, some of which came true. So it's worth looking up that incident if you're not already aware of it. But it's covered very well in this book. You can download this for free. And then he talks about the Mormon story and how that's similar to, got similar elements to the story of Fatima and stuff. And of course the story of Lourdes and Saint Bernadette, which was a story I was made very familiar with when I was a child, when I was brought up at Catholic school. People went to Lourdes from my school, or there were trips there. I didn't go because it's a holy place and you can get healing and stuff. And he mentions a couple of cases about that in here, and it's all very well written up. So it's a very interesting book, and from 1977, and it's all about the crossover between psychic phenomena and UFOs. And Vallée is a very clever man, and there's some good evidence in here to back up what he's saying about this being a consciousness thing. He does tend to miss out some of the more mechanical elements to the UFO phenomena. I'm thinking particularly of the Maslin Beach incident, where I covered that with David Cayton, or David Cayton covered it with me in an earlier video a few years back, where this chap was photographing out in the morning trying to get the sunrise, and then this flying saucer came out of the sea, and he got some really good close-up pictures of it, and this water dripped on him. So that was a very different type of UFO sighting. It didn't involve a being of light, or things coming out of a cloud or something and landing. It was very, very different. And Jacques Vallée doesn't really talk about those sorts of cases that much, but nevertheless, this is a very interesting book. I do mention Jacques Vallée Knowledge Book as well, so give that a read if you want to. Links will be in the description. And then finally, I just wanted to just briefly mention something. It's not sort of stuff I normally mention or cover, but it's just an interesting thought I had regarding it. Now, this video that came up in my playlist was about how this creator Kyle Hill makes science videos, and I think he'd made some video about some dogs that had some unusual genetics or something, and he'd been off to see these dogs in some far off country and spent a lot of time tracking them down and paying his airfare and whatnot to go and film them. And then what's happened with his videos, this footage of the dogs has been stolen and reused by other YouTube channels. And he's perfectly right what he says. I don't have a problem with what he says. It's not about 9/11 or cover-ups or anything like that. But it was just interesting because what's happening is a lot of this content is being stolen and reposted in these various pseudo channel or pseudo fake channels. They have an AI voice, and they're typically the top 10 of this or the top 50 of that. You'd never believe this if it wasn't caught on camera. And some of his footage has been stolen without his permission and used in these videos, which get millions of hits. I mean, he's got 2.6 million views on this video, which is a few months old. But really, why I'm highlighting it is that whilst I don't, authorize the stealing of content, I suppose I kind of wish that people would steal my content, and repost it as much as his stuff gets reposted. So I'm kind of like the opposite. I kind of want people to steal my content, as it were, as long as they're showing the evidence and they're not misusing it. And I mean, in his case, they weren't misusing his clip. They were still showing the same as what he was showing. They weren't trying to misrepresent it, I don't think. They were showing it from the same angle he was. They were just claiming it as their own footage or not giving credit to him for getting hold of it, with quite difficult circumstances. So it's just quite interesting to see the way that people actually react to their content being reused. I want my content to be reused as long as it's not for debunking purposes and it's shown as I gave it. But this guy kind of doesn't, or at least not without proper credit and payment. So it's just interesting that I'm kind of at the opposite end of the scale on the use of content, I suppose. So really, that's all I had to say for today. I'll croak my way through. I hope wish you all the best for 2024 and everything. Thanks again for listening and supporting. And check these things out if it interests you. And I'll talk to you again before too long.